Hi HR Nation, welcome back to another episode of the HR Leaders Podcast, the show where we explore the future of work with industry experts and HR executives from the world's leading global brands. Super excited about today's episode. We're joined by Carl Segerstrom, Senior Vice President of Global Talent Management at Merck. Welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. Nice to see you, Chris.
Are you in the office? It's always rare now when I get to see. Oh,
I am.
Yeah. It's always like a rare occasion now. I get to see someone in the office.
Exactly. It's a few days a week, which is actually quite nice to get back.
So what's the model now? Like a couple of days, and you can choose which days that you want to go, or is there a particular days?
Yeah, we're moving into a hybrid model, and to be candid, we're still learning how that's going to work. Mm-hmm. But we try to follow the work. So we probably on average I tend to come in 3 days a week, but it depends on the collaboration needs you have, right? If I have a day of Zoom meetings and emails, I don't waste the time on the commute, but if I need to collaborate, I come in. So
nice.
We're figuring it out.
Do you have a set day though for you and the team, or is it just when you just kind of arrange it when you need to?
Not yet. My team is spread around the world, so it depends on who's coming in. Exactly.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, tell everyone a little bit more about your background and your journey to where we are now, because you do have quite a unique background and story.
Yeah. So I've been in the pharmaceutical industry for over 20 years at this point. So I'm Swedish originally, and joined a company called Pharmacia back in Sweden, where I'm from, that subsequently became Pfizer, and then that took me to Australia for a bunch of years, and then Singapore, covering Asia Pacific. Moved to a company called Sharing Cloud that then got acquired by Merck, or MSD as we know outside USA and Canada. Moved over to Europe, and now in US. So that kind of, I always say I ended up in this industry by accident and stayed by choice. It's once you're in the industry whose sole purpose is to save and improve lives, it's kind of it makes it meaningful, and it does something to the culture of these companies too. So it's been a good ride, and it changed my life, and it changed my family's lives, given that the kids are born in different countries. So it's been a journey.
Nice. I'm always fascinated with speaking to leaders that have worked across different countries, continents, etc. Looking back, what advice would you give to other leaders who are considering, taking those opportunities? And what are some of the things that you wish you knew going in that you know now?
It's a really good question. So first of all, I would totally advise you to take that opportunity if you have it. It's moving country. Every time I've done it, it's professionally it's daunting, because you move into a new culture. Things you knew or the way you operated might not work in this. So you really have to kind of be willing to change yourself, and you're going to put yourself in uncertain situations or awkward situations, and it takes some emotional labor, if you like, to kind of flex your style. And even on the personal front, I always find the first year is always horrible, no matter how good your benefits are or your relocation support. Everything is new, and everything takes 3 times as much time. Even going and do grocery shopping, you don't know where to go, you don't know how to do it. So, but I always find that it kind of pays back the second year and the third year, because now you're literally living in a new country and you get those experiences. So I found it extremely rewarding and just a growth experience, both personally and professionally.
Yeah. Does it get easier because you've done it the first time, that when you move to another country, you're like, oh, okay, we're going to encounter some of those similar challenges because you've been there before? Yeah. I was in Australia before, now I'm in Singapore. Or is it just every single time a completely different challenge?
I think personally, you learn how little you know. So you grow more humble every time you do it, in terms of, I don't have the playbook for this culture, right? I am used to being, from a culture standpoint, a minority. I don't share the same references. Like, I moved to US and I spent a year pretending I understood football, because that's what people spoke about before a meeting started.
I still do that now.
I say football, about American football. I have no idea.
Okay. So you mean American football? You're like, sure. I don't have any idea.
Yeah, I'm fine talking about Premier League, but they didn't want to talk about that, obviously. So, And then on the kind of personal front, I think you learn to appreciate the fact that it is going to be a period where everything is harder, but that it's coming to an end, and then it's really rewarding. So I think you grow patience sometimes.
Yeah. Did it put any strain or impact on your relationship with your wife?
Yeah, we always say, if you don't have a good relationship doing it, you put it at risk. But so you put strain, it's stressful, but you come out stronger as a family. Because I do think what happens is it's a complete reset of your life. Any habits you had, any kind of commitments outside work, any social circles, it's all gone. You build it all up from scratch, right? So in the beginning, it's just that little core family, and then you start building up a life in a new location based on it. So there's been hard moments, but if you have a strong relationship, I find that it just strengthens and tightens your family.
No, good to hear. Because I usually ask that question, and these are the things that people don't talk about.
Yes.
Totally. Behind closed doors, I speak to many CHROs and leaders, and they talk about the fact that, the impact that it has on that partner that is staying at home with the kids, for example, whether it's, the mum or the dad, that they feel isolated sometimes, their partners at work, living their dream and, their career. And sometimes there can be some challenges with being at home and not having that support network, or that parent is now away from their friends, family, and they're at home all day, every day with the kids in a new environment, in a new city, with a new culture. Where is the supermarket? What do I buy? There's so many things, right? It's
fair. Yeah. And it's often on the spouse.
Yes.
Because you're right. You're off. I mean, we often do. I've done this myself. You move to a new country and you move into a regional job, and you're moving your family to a new place, and then you get on a plane and you're away 3-4 days a week.
I didn't even think about that part.
They have to deal with the reality of living in your country. You live in the office on an airplane, so it's very different.
Yeah, interesting. So looking back, you wouldn't change it? You'd do it all over again?
Yes. I think what I reflect a lot on is what you do to your kids, because they move countries a bunch of times. And whenever I meet people who grew up with parents in the military or diplomats or had similar lives where they moved a lot, I ask them, do you ever regret that your parents did this to you? And they always say, no, I'm better for it. I'm a global citizen. I have friends all over the world. So I keep checking that. And even if I look at my kids, I think they've grown from it. So I
see that as well. They seem to be ever like you just said. But another thing that I'm seeing is they seem to be much more independent.
Yeah,
because they've resilient. So they've that resilience from a very early age, because obviously it is quite tough. You may be building a new set of friends and having to leave, right, or getting comfortable in a new school and having to do that. And it's most of the families that I speak to that have grown up that way, they've got family, their kids are living in different places all over the world because that's normal to them. So that their kid lives halfway across the world, and that the mum lives over here, and my other brother lives over there, and it's like in any other family you think that'd be crazy, but they're like, well, that's the life that they know, right? To be able to do that, it means the world is truly their playground.
It is.
They don't see they don't see any boundaries, which is really cool.
Yes. This question of where are we moving next? It's not a question most kids ask, right? Because when I grew up where I grew up. I went to school where the school was, and that was it, right? Yeah. So,
interesting. Well, I'm glad we jumped into that, because I think it's really, really, really interesting. So a topic I really wanted to talk about is, we've all seen that HR has kind of been pushed to the forefront, especially over the last few years, and many of us will say HR is now more important than ever. And one of the things that you mentioned in our last conversation, which really kind of I was excited to talk about here, is that sort of convergence of skills, AI, machine learning, and advanced analytics, and how that will change the way we work. So I'd love to get your insight and thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's very topical, and I think what you say is so true. It's really a great time to be in HR, and I say that because of the impact you can have on the business. And I think it's part of what you shared, this kind of convergence of of technology and human. I also think it's what we've seen more lately in terms of the Great Resignation and the pandemic work. Things that used to be discretionary or kind of extracurricular, like purpose, like engagement, is now table stakes, right? Exactly. And that's really critical. So it's an opportunity for us as a function to really even take one more step, in my mind.
Yeah. Or even some of those things that used to be seen as benefits are no longer seen as benefits. They're just table stakes. Exactly. So the idea of giving some option to work remotely, people just expect that anyway. That's not that's not an added bonus.
It's not.
It's the first question I get asked, and I'm sure most leaders now, when they go into an interview, before salary, it's what is the working model? Can I work hybrid? Can I work like that? That's number one. That never used to be number one on the list of people's questions, right? When in an interview,
we see that too. And I saw some data recently from LinkedIn that showed out of every job posted on LinkedIn, how many of them were listed as remote versus a specific location. And even over like a 2-year period, it was a exponential growth of these virtual type jobs. So that's the market now. And if you're clever about it, you can cast your net globally and just pick the best talents if you're able to select them.
Yeah. Did it share the exact number? I'm surprised if it's like anything less than 90%, if not more.
Yeah, it was more. I have it, but I can't remember.
No worries.
Right now.
I'll find it.
It was mind blowing when I looked at it.
I bet.
I'll pull it up for you.
So why do you think then that leading with purpose is table stakes? Now,
I find if you want to get the best talents in your given industry or domain, or whatever skill you're after, they tend to want to they work hard, they put a lot of time into what they do. And if you can tell them why we do this beyond profit, which to me is a simple definition of purpose, it's really hard to make a convincing argument. This is where you should spend 60 hours a week, or no matter how much you work. If you put a big chunk of your life into something, and yes, you want to grow, you want to grow your earnings capacity and provide for your family, but people want to do something good. And I think we see those sentiments have been clear with shifts in generations as well. And so and I see companies around the world, no matter what industry you are, trying to define that purpose and do a better job of communicating it as well. And I've seen it in our industry. I feel that's one of our strengths. And we had most people who join because they do want to impact global health. That's the reason to join a big global company.
Have you seen an increase in that because there was such a big spotlight over the last 2 years on the healthcare system to help us? Like a huge spotlight. Have you seen an increase in interest of people, of applications maybe, or conversations that you're hearing from your line managers around, this is why I want to work in this industry in your organization?
Yeah, we've seen a general increase in interest in our industry. Yeah, but I've seen that pre-pandemic too. Mm-hmm. And in those who are in this field, if you're a scientist, or you're a chemical engineer, or the type of capabilities that work in this industry, have always gravitated to. There's a segment of that group that gravitated to research-intensive, purpose-driven type of companies. But I've seen more now. We're competing in terms of data science. We can compete with Amazon or tech companies, right? So and there I see a real opportunity that you can mix purpose with your technical capabilities, and that creates a value proposition for us. But I even see in the short term more the correlation between traffic on our career websites and what we announce or our news, right? So when we've been on in the last more than almost a decade or shy of it, had enormous success with treating cancer in multiple indications, and starting to change what cancer will mean for future generations, or that word will mean. And that to me has been a tremendous benefit for us in terms of attracting talent. Because if you want to impact global health and you want to do good and you want your work to pay off, joining a company that is doing well scientifically and doing well in terms of helping patients will help you get more impact, right? So you want to join kind of a winning team, essentially.
No, definitely.
So I've seen that. But then, we announced our COVID vaccine programs and we saw a spike in interest. And then, as it happens in this industry, they didn't work out as well as those of Pfizer and Moderna, and we saw a drop. So it's almost like the stock market. You
of talent, the talent stock market. Yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned that spike, given the announcements and what you're talking about versus talent. I've never really thought about that, but it shows how important it is, right? And how much people really pay attention. I want to go back to our original point of talking about skills and that sort of convergence between AI and machine learning.
Yes.
How do you think that's going to change work? Like, what does that look like in your mind?
I think it fundamentally will change how we work. I don't believe this will take out the human equation. So you could argue human resources will be obsolete. It's going to be resources. I think it will change how we work. I sometimes think back to how we're now so used to having smartphones, right? And that didn't automate human interaction. It just changed how we interact, right? Even you and I, we're sitting in two different countries now talking, but it's still at the core, it's two individuals talking to each other, right? Even though pre that kind of technology, I would have to fly over to see it. So if you translate that into work, an example for us is the conventional way of identifying chemical compounds or proteins that could do something to a human is through conventional science and based on what you know or experiments in a wet lab. If you can use machine learning and AI to simulate, you can run way more experiments than you could. And now you identify targets faster, and now you have to take that and kind of drive it to conclusions. So that's an example of how it changes work and it helps you get faster or better or do more things with better quality. But in the end, you still need humans to do it.
Yeah. I think one of the things you mentioned, which I wrote down from our last call, is you spoke about how it will help drive precision and accountability.
Yes. I think that's specifically what this does for HR, and I have a lot of thoughts about this. But first of all, for us as a function, it's a new skill, and we need to get our heads around how we define that skill and then help our whatever business we support to build that skill. And then once we have those capabilities, how do you put in place leaders that can manage that and use that skill, and how do you think about it from an org design, development, career pathing standpoint? That's just HR work. It's just a new skill, right? But if you look at how the HR function uses this, one of the things we talk a lot about in my team is this notion of precision talent management. So if you think about, as you build out your predictive capabilities and your way to integrate data set to see what's going on in your organization, that will be the foundation for where you invest in the personal touch or the human business partner
I'm with you.
Investment, right? So instead, I think the old conventional HR models we all grew up in had like a spread, you use a ratio, and you had business partners at about the same frequency around the world, no matter what the division is. I see a future where you're much more looking at where's the competition for skill and talent, where do we see spikes in or predict spikes in turnover, where do we seem to have performance issues or skill or capability issues, and now how do I have a more fungible organization where I appoint this type of intervention. So I think it has the potential to fundamentally change the model we all used for the last couple of decades.
Yeah, I think it's already changing it. Right?
Yeah,
we're already seeing it, right? Imagine now you're going to be able to predict those things with your teams, months, if not, ahead of time, and be able to action on that. So we speak often and many years ago around predictive and prescriptive analytics. We're now seeing it take place, and many of those models were used and adapted to help us through the pandemic. Actually, in many organizations that I worked with,
it came a long way because you had no choice but to use it.
Yeah, because we were forced to, and those companies that didn't were like, we're just blind. We are literally blind. Everyone's at home. No one knows what's doing what. We have no idea what we know if someone's engaged or actually, physically and mentally okay. There was so many things where companies had that real wake up call to feel like, well, actually, we have no idea what work's being done. We have no measurement, no tools. Our leaders are leading blind, and then it's causing them to panic and say, we need everyone back in the office because I can't see they're doing work.
We saw exactly that. The month we went into, it was slightly different timing around the world, but when we went into the lockdown, meeting time went up on average 20%.
Yeah, because they're like overcompensating.
And they more than converted their commuting time into working time, right? But at the same time, you could see from a network analysis standpoint how the collaboration within your functional networks increased, but the bridge to other internal networks faded over time.
It was non-existent, right?
That's the kind of risk of it. Yes.
It was not because you wasn't having those organic interactions that take place, and you have to be now super intentional, whether it's through technology or, I don't know, it has to be through technology. That's a part of it to making those moments happen. If I was speaking to a company recently, one of the ways they're doing it is every time they onboard a new employee, they get put into a buddy system with different people across different functions and continents to help foster, one, to have a great onboarding experience, of course, to have a buddy, but two, to, you're onboarded with someone with a different function and a different role, different part of the business, and you are now starting to build that networking capability within the organization as well. So it's a simple way of doing it, but it works. No, but we don't have in that model is the data to figure that out. So, but there are many companies now popping up that are doing amazing work in that space. Yeah.
We tried things like, we have a program called Mystery Coffee, where it's like an internal blind dating app. So you sign up for a virtual or physical coffee, and the system randomly generates a connection. And I've done it a few times, and it's fascinating. You meet people that you wouldn't have met before, and you always walk away with some new insights. I don't think it replaces every now and then being in person. But these small things can start to at least offset some of it.
Yeah, again, just the intentionality behind it, right? And you're making it fun. You're making it fun as well. Fun, informative, building a network. That's cool as well to do that. And then obviously various ways of doing that through employee resource groups.
Yes.
As an example, right? People can bond over. There could be a group for people that love pets. And you just share your stories, right? Exactly. And that builds the connection in the organization. So I'm seeing companies be super creative, and I'm seeing all sorts of groups being created around hobbies and passions, and again, things that connect people through purpose, right? And what means a lot to them. So what we are starting to build, I think we're at the beginning of it. Like, no one's really solved it, but I'm starting to see companies be very, very creative around that, and even how the way in which people are now rewarded and recognized has to completely fundamentally change. How do you recognize an individual, right? And the contribution to the business in a hybrid virtual environment.
Yes.
So it
really starts to increase the expectations of what it means to be a good manager or a leader too, because you really need to create the authentic connection with your team. You're managing outcomes. You're not managing the work. See, because I don't see what you do on a day-to-day basis, but I see what the outcome is, which really is what matters, right? But those leaders who had more of a micromanagement mindset of, I'm looking at every step you're taking. That's really hard in a virtual or hybrid setting because you don't have that visibility. Exactly. So this notion of empowerment and managing the outcomes really comes to a point in this world.
Yeah. Even my team today, I had a meeting this morning with Ivan, who's probably listening right now because he's going to edit this.
Right.
I said, I'm really struggling to understand how the production team's working together and how work's being delegated and what's being delivered, who's delivering what. Can you just give me an overview? Because I don't know. And we honestly haven't figured out yet. And we're on that journey to figure out a system of figuring out what that looks like. And we've tried multiple tools. We've tried Asana, we've tried ClickUp, we've tried various other versions of those, and we're still trying to figure out what works for us. And again, that's the thing. It's not a one size fits all. It's what works for you, your business context, and your culture as well. On that point, then we spoke about employee engagement, and how do you think then we do take employee engagement and experience from discretionary efforts? I think to you, the way you put it last time was to lifeline.
I notice it now. I think it's a combination of a hybrid, post-pandemic and hybrid world where you and a market where it's the candidates market. So really, I feel a change in the discussion around engagement from a concept that would likely give you, if your workforce is engaged, they will give you more discretionary effort to. It's really, if you don't have high engagement, that's really what's going to drive your business. And it really is a measure of do people enjoy what they're doing, and why would they come to work or stay here? And in this environment, people vote with their feet. So if they don't like it, they're not going to put up with it for too long, and they're going to go look for another opportunity. So I think it's shifting from a nice measure to a critical measure, and then how do you create that culture or that workplace where people feel they do meaningful work, they feel they can apply their skills, and they feel they can grow. And that's really what we're seeing. If I look at when we lose people, and we still do remarkably well given the external movement, it is not about compensation in the first instance. It's about if I see growth and if I feel valued. And only if those two things are not true, then it's about compensation. So it's really about that kind of making sure people feel that they can grow, they're valued, and they apply their skills to meaningful work.
How are you filtering that message out to the rest of the business then? Because we know that, we agree on that, but trying to get those tools and language and into the hands of every leader and manager in the business is so challenging.
Yes, it is. We're trying to get more directly out to the managers. So we have 16,000 managers managing our global workforce. So the more we can equip them with these tools, and the more we can give them access to see, this is the data for your work team, or this is how the trends are looking, and here's some practical things you can do. So just trying to strike up a direct conversation with them. That's where we had the most success. If you try to do everything through cascading in a hierarchy, it gets watered down, or it takes too long. So I think in today's environment, you got to find a way to have a more direct dialogue with your middle management and frontline managers.
Yeah. And have you found any easier ways to do that, or is it just because there is no shortcut from what my understanding is just those one-on-one, one by one?
Yes. I think of it as almost surround sound. I think ideally you want to create an environment where you hear from, on a one-to-one basis, from your local HR partner, your direct manager, but also hearing the messages from the center, from the enterprise. So we tried some of those things in terms of having more large-scale leadership conferences, for example, where all our top 1,500 leaders get to hear from management, and then make sure we follow up with a kind of cascade, or things like sending out simple newsletters that are practical. And I find that the managers further out in the organization are really receptive to getting it, and are really have a lot of energy to absorb and take it up. So it's we're experimenting, but I think there's ways to do that today.
Yeah. I think one of the most effective ways I've seen is just getting a lot of those leaders together in cohorts so they can share their stories. what's happening in their teams, what's going well, what's not, and together kind of co-creating solutions. And I'm not the only one just struggling over here. And because sometimes it's one thing hearing from the HR team or your team or hearing from the business leaders, but being in those small, whether it's like a small Zoom group of 10, 20 and doing those sort of cohorts and hearing, even if they did it once a week, once a month, to be able to share that in a safe space with other managers and have that conversation. I feel like that's a really effective way.
I agree. And I think the key word you said there is a safe space, because a lot of this is new and there's no right or wrong answer. You gotta admit to say, I have this situation and I don't know what the solution is. And
you may not directly want to say that to your line manager. So someone may not directly want to say that to their direct report, right? Or the person they're reporting to. So to have a space where they can go and have a conversation, say, can you give me a bit of advice here, right? Because not everyone has, unfortunately, not everyone has a leader they feel really open and confident to being vulnerable with. That's just the reality.
I fully agree.
As well. Listen, I want to jump into our quick fire round before I let you go. So I'm going to ask you some questions, but you've only got 30 seconds per question. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
What are your hobbies and passions outside of the office?
Well, outside work and family, whenever I have time, I'm an avid cyclist. So I used to race mountain bikes and road bikes, and that's my sanity. I hit the road and disconnect for a bit.
Yeah, it's a good way to disconnect though, right? Just jump on the bike.
It is.
Get out there.
It is. And even if sometimes I just need to be in my own head, or if I have the time, I listen to a podcast and I spend a few hours and I learn something too. So it's
nice.
Yeah, it's good.
If you could click your fingers and change one thing about HR, what would it be?
I think I've often seen in HR a point of view that one of the reasons we exist is to protect managers from themselves, or that the managers are not capable. There's kind of a way to say this is why we need it. I always have the view that a better mindset is to assume your managers are capable and try to make them better. And if they're not, we help them find another job. But I think it's limiting to think about yourself as the function is going to help those who are not good. And if you assume managers are not capable, you're overprotecting and you're creating processes and systems that are over-engineered in my mind. So I think I would shift that mindset. I've seen it in many places.
Yeah. What would you say is the sort of one thing that global talent leaders like yourself aren't talking about enough but should?
That's a really good question. Because one thing we do is we talk a lot.
And I know that. Yeah. I think what I'm getting at is those things that, perhaps people are treading on eggshells, not wanting to talk about, but really should talk more about. Yeah.
I do think, and I say that, and I've seen a change over the last couple of years. So these topics of inclusion, or belonging, or vulnerabilities, or actually checking in how people are, how you're feeling, how you're really doing. Those type of authentic discussions, I think we sometimes stayed away from as the function. I think an HR function moved from being away from the employee champion type of role to a restructuring, strategy driving kind of business function. I think we left some of that on the way. And I think what we're learning now is we got to be able to play both those roles, because there's really business value in having that connection with the workforce too.
Yeah. Well, we've seen it, right? We've come full 360. Now that's number one on the agenda for most leaders that I speak to every day. So it's a very interesting point. How do you think your family and friends would describe what you do for a living?
I often get that question. What do you really do? Right? And it's even the way that question is framed.
What do you do?
Assumption. Exactly.
Like, wait a minute. I don't like the tone of the way you ask that question.
Exactly. I think family would say I talk to people in meetings. They've seen me stare into a screen for the best part of 2 years, or I travel, right? Which is probably pretty true. I meet people, I go to meetings, and I travel. So.
That's what they'll say.
I think that's how they.
Well, to be fair, they've got a pretty good point when they say you travel.
Yeah, exactly. They do.
They've got the passports to prove it. So
exactly
as well.
Exactly.
If you wasn't doing, global talent HR, what do you think you'd be doing?
It's a good question. I honestly think I fell into it by accident. I studied behavioral sciences and psychology and didn't want to become a psychologist. I think if you find something that you seem to have a knack for or reasonably good at it, you actually enjoy it because there's like satisfaction in doing well in something. So I got to think about what something else I would have been good at. I had some opportunities in my career to step into more of a general management or line type of role. I think that would have been a fun step, both to kind of own a P&L, but also manage a team. So that's probably something I would have gravitated to.
Yeah. Well, you're doing a lot of that anyway, right?
Yes, exactly.
But with the added benefit of it aligning with your passions and purpose. So it's funny because everyone struggles with that question, but I always like asking it because it makes you think, right? What would I be doing if I wasn't doing this? I ask myself that question a lot all the time.
What was your answer to it, Chris?
I think I'll be. I started in sales and kind of built my career. I think I really enjoy sales. It's weird because a lot of people don't. I love the idea of bringing new products to market and end to end from the initial creation and ideation to it being in the hands of the customer and delivering value. For me, something about that journey is so exciting to have a vision and then, and then build it and hence why I'm probably an entrepreneur, right? Doing what I'm doing now.
I think you describe what you're doing.
I am already doing it, but I think when I don't see myself in one job, like, because a founder of the company, I'm kind of, my hands are in everything. So therefore there's an infinite learning curve, if that makes sense. And there's an infinite number of directions. So I couldn't see myself doing anything different than now because I'm already living what I want to do as well. So it's a hard one.
Keep doing it.
Yeah, I will do my best. What would you say is the biggest investment you've made in yourself in your career?
Talking about investment in a liberal way, I had a leader, this is back when I worked back in Australia, who I think more than anyone else showed me that it's okay to be yourself. I think as we grow up, quote unquote, professionally, we take on a role, right? And you feel like you got to fit into a corporate environment,
and a persona, right?
Be a certain way, a persona, yes. And I felt it was hugely beneficial for me early on to see that it's actually okay to be your full self with your strengths and your weaknesses and be much more authentic. And if not that perfect or polished, actually gonna help you because you be authentic. And I learned that from him quite early on, which I think has really helped me.
It's a game changer, isn't it? It really is, and because it's exhausting to try and live and be in something and constantly trying to please
someone else,
trying to please everyone and be everything to everyone. It's just like and then when
it's a relief.
It really is, right? It's like as well, right? And you realize, what was I doing so long? But it is because we're taught by our parents, even our schools, our teachers, society to conform to a persona, right? Along the way, whereas actually being you is enough. And once you can come to terms with that, it's just like, exactly. Last thing before I let you go, what advice would you give to all of the people listening, sort of the HR leaders of tomorrow that are going to be on the journey to where you are today?
Stay curious. If something that worked for me was if there's work that there's some kind of emotional response to, if I'm nervous about something, if there's a conversation I am hesitant to have, that's often a signal there's value there, because then it's a high stakes conversation, or there's work that is new to you, there's stretch in it. So constantly find a way to somehow lean into your discomfort because that often correlates with growth opportunities. Another way to frame it is when you look at jobs, and I always say this, try to find jobs that you're equally terrified and excited about. If that's true, it's the right next move for you. If you're not at all terrified, it's probably not enough stretch for you to grow from it. And if you're only terrified and not excited, that's a bad job for you too.
Yeah. I love that advice, by the way. I was talking about that. I came out of the gym this morning with Shane, my co-founder, and we was talking about that on our walk back to the office. And we always say, the way we frame it is to seek discomfort.
Yeah.
I even have a few t-shirts that I made for myself that has seek discomfort on them. And you are right. That's where the magic happens, right? Yeah. You know, if you're nervous, you're feeling a bit hesitant, but it's also exciting at the same time. That's the way you need to lean in. It doesn't feel good. And you guess what? You are going to make mistakes and you're going to fail, but that's where the progress happens. So I love that advice.
And it feels amazing afterwards.
Oh,
so it gives you the reward.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, listen, thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
I loved it. Thank you so much.
And I'm glad we managed to connect as well. When next time we're in London, let me know. We'll watch some actual football.
That'd be good. Let's do that. I look forward to it.
And I'll see you again soon. But apart from that, I wish you all the best and I'll see you again soon. All right. Bye-bye.
You too, Chris. Thank you. Take care.